The day the sky first dimmed during an unscheduled eclipse, Grandmother Inez drew the shutters and whispered a name I had only seen woven into the margins of her illustrated folio, the Obsidian Puppeteer. I was 9 and eager to tug at mysteries, so I asked if the puppeteer was a villain or a hero. She paused in the dusk-shaped lamplight, tracing the spine of the book with a finger gnarled by decades of embroidery. "Neither," she said. "He simply loves his craft more than anything that breathes." Grandmother died 2 winters later. That folio became mine, its pages smelling of almond oil and candle smoke. Over time I devoured its drawings of string-thin constellations, wooden stages floating among nebulae, and suns carved with mask-like faces. But the legend's ending pages were missing, torn out with surgical care. The absence felt louder than any sentence I could read. It led me to apprentice under Master Silvio, the last marionettist in the city of Calvenza, where people still believed stories could talk reality. Silvio's theatre nestled in an alley so narrow that spectators touched elbows through open windows on opposite walls. Inside, lanterns shaped like crescent moons hung from the rafters, casting warm halos on crates of puppets. Some were painted with weathered cheeks, others, stark and uncoloured, awaited story. Silvio himself was fragile as parchment, but when he slipped loops of twine around his fingers, he shimmered with a vigour no instrument of metal could rival. I learned the secrets of balancing wooden joints, of breathing life into stillness with a fingertip flick. Yet every knot I tied reminded me of Grandmother's unfinished folio. I needed the truths that had been excised. I pressed Silvio about the Obsidian Puppeteer during late rehearsals as we mended warped bodies with beeswax. "The legend is older than the temples," he said one night, eyes glinting under lamplight. "They say his stage is the firmament. The suns and moons we see are his marionettes, carved of lightstone and shadow glass. When he grows bored, he crosses their strings and the sky goes dark." He tilted his head, "But some stories bow only to those who bleed for them. Are you ready to bleed, mirror?" I pledged I was. Silvio's theatre took no coin that month. Calvenza's citizens trudged about with hands shielding their eye lines, for eclipses had begun to appear without celestial schedule, brief tremors of night slicing the afternoons. Livestock refused feed, market scales misread weight, priests lit purification fires that spat cold smoke. Nobody blamed the sun. They blamed us, the puppeteers. Our vocation had become too literal. Rumour reached me that a caravan of antiquarians had acquired a fragment attributed to the missing pages of Grandmother's folio. I stole away at dawn, leaving Silvio a note pinned by my apprentice pin. I must find the hands that pull our sky. The caravan was camped by Lake Halcyon, its tents adorned with embroidered eclipses. Inside a brocaded pavilion, I found a map inked on vellum. It depicted a mountain, a spiral road, and at the summit a symbol of crossed marionette sticks. The caption read, "Vault of the Obsidian Stage." A coin purse and an oath of discretion secured my copy. I travelled alone, past vineyards where grapes burst from unexpected chill, through valleys whose farmers shook fists at the errant moon, and over ridges where clouds drooped like curtains about to fall. At night I practiced finger drills with spare threads of silk, believing dexterity might shield me where swords would not. On the 10th dawn, I reached the foot of Mount Sedera. A spiral path etched up its black slope like a loose string. No birds soared overhead. Even echo refused to answer my voice. Halfway up, an eclipse began with such speed I felt dropped into a well. Shadows slid over crags like ink poured on glass, yet the air held a note of expectancy, as though the darkness were applause waiting for performance. Near the summit stood a gate of polished obsidian, reflecting my torchlight in agitated reds. I pushed and entered a cavernous amphitheatre carved into the mountain's heart. There was no roof. Above, the eclipse formed an unbroken disk. I realized I had crossed its center. Below the opening, Suspended on taut strands that glimmered even in darkness, hung two enormous marionettes. A sun of smoked gold panels and a moon of silvered bone. Each was tethered to a crisscrossing lattice of black cords that snaked upward into shadows. The scene mimicked what I'd studied in the folio, but at impossible scale. A figure emerged on the stage's far side, tall, shrouded in robes that absorbed every stray photon. His hands bore rings carved from volcanic glass, each ring spooling half-invisible strings that stretched overhead. He moved with the silent precision of a spider at the web's heart. "You are late," he said, voice neither cruel nor kind but resonant. "My understudy should have arrived weeks before the cloth of day began to fray." I tried to steady my breath. "I am no understudy. I am Mira, granddaughter of Innes, seeker of the lost pages." "You misunderstand," he replied. "Those pages were instructions I drafted centuries ago, disseminated among mortals so that one might ascend and share the strain of what I hold. The cosmos weighs heavy. Even obsidian cracks." He beckoned me forward. The ground near him was inlaid with planetary diagrams and constellations, each with channels cut for pulleys. The marionettes above respond to emotion filtered through technique. My mood shapes noon. My doubt births dusk. Balance requires counterbalance. When fatigue overcomes me, eclipses stutter and mortals panic. He raised his palms. I intended to train another long before muscle memory faltered, but none reached me. You did. That qualifies you. The eclipse overhead began to wobble. Thin crescents of light blinked along its rim until the circle looked serrated. The puppeteer's fingers twitched and the sun marionette jutted like a heart in arrhythmia. "You see," he said, calm but sweating obsidian-coloured beads, "the cords slip when my pulse does." I knew fear, but also the wild elation of finding purpose in the abyss. "Teach me," I said. He produced a pair of gloves made from blackened kid leather. Threads emerging from each fingertip ended in crystalline hooks. He guided my hands into them, adjusting the fit as a midwife might cradle a newborn. The moment the cords fastened to my fingers, 1,000 microtensions sang across my nerves. I sensed the sun puppet's vast heat like a sleeping lion and the moon's cool gravity as a steady heartbeat. "Everything is weight and counterweight," he instructed, his own strings woven beside mine. "Lift your index fingers together." Gently, I did. Far above, the moon slid a fraction south, the sun north, shaving a sliver of shadow from the cratered rim. My skin prickled with vertigo, for I felt continents bathed anew in daylight. Farmers exhaled. Birds resumed flight. "The world applauds its unseen cast," the puppeteer said. "But remember, applause can drown the music if you listen too long." Days blurred, or what passed for days in that cavern where we defined day. We worked in sequences, raising dawn like a curtain, dimming dusk into a lullaby. I learned that clouds formed where strings twisted, that tides depended on the moon puppet's subtle rocking. The puppeteer rarely spoke of himself. Yet I noticed hairline fractures along his obsidian rings, and once, after guiding a particularly delicate transition, he collapsed onto the inlaid floor, palms smoking. "You're dying," I said, cradling his head. "Obsidian is volcanic glass," he murmured. "Glass remembers fire but cannot return to it without shattering." I demanded how this role fell to him in the first place. He replied with a faint smile, "A bet with gods whose names even I forget. I won a stage and lost an exit." While he slept, I examined the rigging, discovering ways to distribute tension more equally, weaving secondary loops so fewer threads cut into his flesh. By degree, the sky regained its former predictability. Newspapers in Colvenza wrote of the miraculous return of reliable dawns. They credited priests, astronomers, even politics. No one considered a girl threading daylight with an old myth. One rotation later, though rotation is poor language for a place where we spun worlds with wrist turns. The puppeteer beckoned me to the rim of the amphitheatre. "I feel lighter," he said, "and that terrifies me. He removed his gloves, placing them into my knotted sash. A string unwound cannot resume tension without fraying. It is time. Across the stage lay a chalk circle I had avoided. Now he stepped inside. The ladders above responded. Cords that had hitherto fed through his rings loosened, curling downward like dead vines. The sun and moon shuddered, but remained balanced beneath my solo guidance. He knelt, touching the earth, and the chalk flared into molten orange. Then his form diluted, as though he were a silhouette painted on water. I reached toward him, felt only heat and smelled volcanic ash. When the flash subsided, the chalk circle was glassy, and the puppeteer was gone. I stood alone, amid strings humming with pressure that moments ago was halved. My knees buckled. I fought rising hysteria by recalling Silvio's mantra. A puppet falls only when the puppeteer admits gravity. I willed my breath steady, shifting weight across my digits like a pianist modulating chords. The sun moaned. Yes, moaned, a rolling basaltic timbre, but held. I coaxed the moon into an elliptical dance to bleed surplus tension. Gradually, the chorus of threads eased into harmony. Night and day revolved with deliberate grace. Days passed, or the equivalent loops of my command, before I dared sleep. I dreamed of the Obsidian puppeteer wandering a desert of shattered mirrors. He dipped a hand into sand, withdrew nothing. When he saw me, he mouthed, "Cut me free." I awoke with fingers trembling so violently the sunrise veered lemon green before I corrected it. I lacked context for that dream until I noticed a lone cord that no longer connected anywhere above. It slithered along the ground, pulsing weakly, leading to the chalk circle. I tugged and felt resistance like a fish pulling from great depth. Realization struck. His essence remained tethered, unable to cross whatever threshold awaited him. That tether was the final piece the missing pages must have described, the cut that sets the master free. But severing strings felt blasphemous. In marionette lore, cutting cords was a gesture of anger, the puppeteer's suicide. Yet did not grandmother's folios say, mercy sometimes looks like ruin? I traced the cord up to a ring still clamped around my left thumb. It gleamed obsidian. To release him, I would lose the anchoring that stabilized the sun. The system might spiral. Calculation buzzed through me like wasps. I fetched a shard of volcanic glass from the amphitheater wall, sharp enough to shear cord, crude enough to slice flesh. I rehearsed the motion in air. One decisive stroke. Tears blurred puppet and string alike. I whispered a prayer to any cosmos that cared. Let light and darkness find choreographers anew. Then I cut. Pain stung, though whether from skin split or universe shifting I cannot say. The cord snapped with a sound like thunder trapped inside crystal. Instantly, a jolt rippled through the lattice. The sun lurched, the moon recoiled. I flung both arms upward, compensating, weaving leftover cords through fresh configurations, waltzing the celestial bodies until they nested into new orbits. My thumb bled down my wrist, staining glove and floor, but the sky above remained intact, no eclipse slated for surprise. Relief rolled through me. The severed cord writhed briefly, and then evaporated into sparks that climbed the air and exited through the roofless ocular. I heard, more than saw, a sigh released across eternity. Somewhere a puppeteer had been cut free. Silvio found me months later. He entered the Obsidian gate with hesitant steps, face worn by travel and grief. "Reports of your disappearance reached me," he said. "Theatre's closed. Nobody wants shows anymore. They already have one above their heads. I followed rumors of a mountain that hums at night." I embraced him with my uninjured arm, for the other still bore a ribbon of scab. "I needed to learn," I said simply. He stared at the colossal marionettes and the cords tapering into my gloves. "And what have you learned?" "That the show never ends. Only the puppeteers change." I guided his hand to a spare glove the Obsidian master had left folded in a niche. "Help me keep it steady." Silvio hesitated, then slid his fingers in. His eyes widened as microtensions introduced themselves along his nerves. I showed him how to cradle daylight, how to coax tides with a subtle flick. He laughed, half fearful, half euphoric. "Mira, we used to play for audiences of 50. Now we play for oceans." "We always did," I said. "We just didn't realize the curtain was so high." Together we choreographed the next eclipse months in advance, weaving it to occur at dusk where crowds could watch without blindness. We ensured it would last precisely the span of a breath and a wish. People would gather with smoked glass lenses and cardboard boxes, as they had in less jittery times. They would marvel at the cosmic coin trick, unaware that a young woman and her aging mentor bent knees atop a mountain, fingers drawing diagrams in air. One night, while Silvio slept, I ascended a staircase of iron lattice to inspect the marionettes up close. The sun's surface resembled hammered bronze, its heat no more than a hearth because symbolism eclipsed physics here. The moon was etched with lullabies from languages extinct. I rested my palm on its craters. The puppet responded with a hum-like heartbeat within a seashell. For the first time, I did not feel dread at the weight of responsibility. I felt partnership. Years later, though calendars blur when you choreograph dawn, young acolytes arrived, following plagiarized maps and desperate omens. Some came with greed, others with wonder. I greeted each at the Obsidian gate, asking the question the master once asked me. "Are you ready to bleed?" Most fled, a few stayed. We trained them. Silvio passed on during a gentle autumn invented by our strings. We wove a memorial into the aurora borealis that night, a green curtain parting to reveal a puppet silhouette bowing in slow arc. Calvenza's astronomers called the phenomenon the Silvio ribbon. They never knew its author. As I age, I feel fissures spidering through my own gloves. Obsidian cracks, as the master said. The sky, though, remains a stage bound by story. I've hidden fresh pages of instruction in theatres and libraries, enclosed within children's fables, waiting for someone curious enough to piece them together. Legends need incompletion. It beckons seekers when my time to exit arrives. I hope my understudy grasps the blade quickly, with love, not hesitation, and severs the cord that keeps me tethered. May my freed spirit wander whichever desert mirrors follow, and may the sun and moon remain in motion, forever dancing to unseen hands. And if, on some afternoon, an eclipse drifts across your path out of sequence, do not fear. It may only be a lesson, or an invitation, from the lineage of puppeteers who learned that, to govern light, one must sometimes let go into darkness, trusting the next pair of fingers to tug the heavens back open.